Folks, welcome back to the Rec Room with Brian Rector. And today, let's go. We got another opportunity to have a conversation. And I'm really excited about this one. I know I say it a lot. I really do. That's something that is not exclusive, my excitement per episode. But the fact is, there's a couple reasons behind this one as to why I'm pumped. And we've been thinking about this one since mid-February. Mid-February, I had a chance to go visit my best friend, Briggs Moore, who is a member of the Army West Point Rifle Team at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. And what was super cool about that moment is not only was it the second time I was able to be there at West Point, but it was an opportunity where, shoot, we got to hang out, And these moments, they don't come around very often because we were both in Oregon and then moving from Oregon to Michigan and then Oregon to New York, respectively. It got tough for a little bit, but we figured out ways to get back together. And by association, folks, I have gotten to know and learn from and respect his coach, Leighton Dempster. Hello, coach. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good. Happy to be here. Happy to just talk, with you. Gotten to know you from Briggs as well. So excited that you've been able to come up and see, him really start to learn and develop as he's been a cadet over the last 4 years. So excited to be here.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And thank you for doing it. I wanted to tell you, like we were talking off camera, but I'll say it while we're on. I so appreciated when you did reach out and said, "Hey, this is something I want to be a part of." Because one of the things I've been sorting through is like, what what is going to help people say yes? B, why do some say no? And C, it feels pretty dang good when somebody does say yes. And so I appreciated you for that. And I'm glad that we're able to do it. But I wanted to kind of throw us back a couple years because you, being the head coach at Army West Point, have been able to have oversight of what's going on with the squad and kind of develop and mold and shape the culture. But before that, you were the assistant to Webwright. And before that, you were a competitor yourself at Memphis. And so I wanted to ask you, like, I feel as though it's pretty rare that a competitor will jump into the coach's seat and then to being ahead as soon as, or as quickly as you have. So what was that transition like? And please take me back to kind of how that thing jump started.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot quicker than I anticipated it to
Mm,
be, like just the transition process.
mhm,
I will say the rifle community is very small. So everyone knows everyone. All of my competitors are now either, retired athletes or they coach in college as well. So, like you mentioned, I went to University of Memphis for 4 years where I competed. Go Tigers, go. I love Memphis. I love the city. Love the athletic department there and just the culture of the,
mm.
I almost said academy, the institution.
That's right.
Very, very grateful for my time at Memphis. And, honestly, I stopped shooting because I have a back injury.
Mm, mhm,
Just by nature of the sport, it kind of got worse over the 4 years that I was in college and, decided it was maybe time to put the guns down. And after a great degree in taxation and accounting, I decided I did not want to do that. So I've looked for opportunities to stick around rifle a little bit. I really wanted to be a grad assistant, but there were no options available the year I
mm,
graduated. So, um, WebWright took a chance on me as a how old was I? A 21-year-old fresh college graduate. About 2 weeks after I graduated from Memphis, I started, coaching here. Absolutely fell in love with West Point, fell in love with the cadets, the culture around what it takes to do hard things, and then how to get back up when maybe you fail at doing
mm,
some hard things. And really just got a lot of respect for, not only what, our men and women do in, our military, but the development that the cadets are doing here at West Point, and decided that I never want to coach anywhere else. And, I was going to stay here as long as Coach Wright would have me. Um, Luckily, when, he decided to step away from the program, the athletic director, who's now the AD at TCU,
Mm,
my buddy gave me an opportunity and, promoted me to head coach. And I just finished my third season as head coach. And it's been a very rewarding and very like patience trying process.
mm,
Uh, Recruiting the people that I want on the team, building the culture that I want on the team, and developing these athletes not only as rifle shooters but as leaders of character, and as young men and women who are going to go out and impact our soldiers, is something that has just taken me a lot of time to figure out, like, well, what is my role and how can I actually make this an environment that breeds success rather than making an environment that demands it. Because everyone wants to be successful,
mm.
but how can we create an environment that creates successful people and successful opportunities rather than just demanding that we figure out a way at all costs? So, the transition has been a little rocky at times, but thankfully, the cadets at West Point, Briggs specifically, helping me with that transition, has done a phenomenal job at holding me accountable to the standards that is set by the academy, as well as just like giving me guidance for like, hey, what does this military term mean and how can we incorporate it into our team culture?
Mm.
Or hey, how can we protect our team culture and maybe like just be student athletes sometimes as well, so
Sure.
there's that balance. And I really leaned on the cadets a lot to just get their opinion on what that balance should look like, because yes, I'm the head coach, but it's their team, it's their culture. And I believe everything comes from the top down, but it's got to come from the bottom up as well. And so that's really been my big focus, when taking over the program.
Mm. Yeah, there was so much good, I feel, that you just gave in that answer. So many different ways we could go. But what I was thinking kind of right off the bat is I'm looking and searching for like what is evidence for being affirmed in this position, right? And for being welcomed and accepted into the role and being shown that, hey, maybe I'm doing something right. And what I thought about immediately, Coach, is having won the Great American Rifle Conference Coach of the Year after year two.
Mhm.
For you, when that accolade came through, what were some of the things that you were thinking about? And did that confirm the fact that, hey, there's value to what we're doing here? We're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, my initial reaction to when I, received that award, and it was really cool. We were hosting conference championships that year,
Hmm.
so it was at West Point. The team was there, our support staff was there, Mark, my boyfriend, was there. Like it was a really cool environment to be in to receive an award like that. Um, I honestly didn't feel like I deserved it because I was like, man, there's so much more that I want to achieve and so much more I want to do and so many like
Mm,
other opportunities for impact that I want to have, that I was like, they're just being nice, but once I really like just kind of let the season settle down and kind of evaluated like what had happened that season, both on and off the range, I had the realization, like, you know what, like I am making progress. We are making progress as a team. And I may have received the award, but I didn't do the work that, really resulted in that award. I just facilitated, great practices with authentic cadets that want to be the best that they can be.
mm,
I, you know, created a space where they felt safe enough to come to me with their problems so that I could mentor them. I developed those authentic and trusting relationships, and that is the like the reward in itself, not necessarily like the little plaque thing that I got that says GARC Coach of the Year.
sure.
It's very rewarding, and it's very, humbling, to receive something like that, but it's
Mm,
definitely not something that I think about often. I just think about the feedback that I've gotten from the cadets
mm,
and what they say, and how they value me as a coach and, as a person. And that's what means a lot more. But I think the reality is like that's why, I got the award in the first place, is because I care about people
Mm,
and I'm not willing to sacrifice that just to see a performance outcome.
mm, mm. And I think one thing that you just mentioned, which strikes a chord with me because I've heard it being in proximity to one of your guys, one of your captains, is that uh, there's a balance that has been struck between the athletic and the cadet lifestyle. And I wanted to touch on that because that feels like a very difficult thing to do, especially being somebody who doesn't come from the military background. And so there's a lot of learning that goes into that. There's a lot of empathy that goes into that.
Mhm.
And the understanding that where I come from is different from where they come from, but we can do it together because we're going to work to communicate and to learn each other to get it right. Was there a moment for you that you kind of realized, oh, this place functions differently? Was there a challenge that you hit that you went, okay, we need to sort through this thing now?
I mean, it's hard to walk onto West Point's campus and not see that it functions differently, right? Like it's in
Sure.
your face everywhere you go. I
Hmm.
knew that before taking the job here.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't understand that until really my first season as head coach.
Mm.
First 3 years as assistant, I think I struggled with different things each year. If I'm looking back, like I definitely struggled with the empathy part of it my first year, because West Point's hard. Being a Division I athlete in general is hard.
Absolutely.
Doing it and having all of these external and additional expectations and requirements on you from your institution
Mm.
is a whole nother level of difficulty.
Sure.
But I think, as a first year assistant coach, I didn't have that empathy. And I was like, hey, you chose this lifestyle. Like, suck it up, buttercup. Like, let's do it.
Got it.
And now it's more like, hey, yes, they chose to come to West Point. They chose to do hard things, but that doesn't mean that they can't have a bad day and they can't, like, just need a break from
Mm.
all of it. Like, but the reality is that they're 18 to 22-year old,
That's
you
right.
know?
Hmm.
Me being a college athlete, I think it was hard for me to see that. Or being so close to college athlete age, it was really hard for me to see that. Now that I'm, a little bit more removed from being in college and being on a team and, just had some life experience happen, it's really eye-opening to see like, yeah, this place is hard, but not a single day has any of my athletes came down and not given me everything that they had left in the tank for practice.
Mm.
And that is what's different about West Point. Um, they will come and they will give you everything that you are asking for and more because that's what's expected of them. And it's not like I need 100% every day, but if you have 30% to give to rifle, I need 100% of that 30, and I never have to hold them accountable to that.
Mm.
And that's definitely something that we've developed, over the 6 years that I've worked at West Point. But um, being here is what helps you understand the difficulty and what helps you understand that military aspect of it. Sure, there's things that I wish that we wouldn't have to do because it has nothing to do with rifle or athletics, but those are the things that maybe the cadets care about, and me buying into that shows them that I care about them as a person, and that's what's important. And experiencing those things that are outside of the sport is what I think has helped me understand the why behind West Point a little bit better.
Mm. Absolutely. And I think that's a really interesting conversation to get into is the why of West Point. When I think about it, the thing that comes to mind is the chiseling out of leaders and the ability to navigate decision making and to put folks in the best equipped position to be folks who are leading in within our military in different capacities. Um, like from your perspective, what are some of the ways that West Point is able to do that and kind of accomplish that goal of chiseling out the leadership and defining the qualities within folks that will lead them to be decision makers and change makers within the military and within society post military operation?
Well, I mean, everything West Point does is devoted to that mission, to creating leaders of character, right?
Hmm.
I think some of the things that I've personally witnessed that are unlike anywhere else, that I've experienced. West Point has a leadership development model, right? So as a freshman, which we call plebe,
Hmm.
um, your entire, base, your part in that leadership model, the role that you play is the idea of followership, which I'm not convinced that's a real word, but I haven't looked it up. But followership, right? It's how do you be a good follower? Not just blindly doing what you're told, but also like, is this an ethical, like, is this decision ethical? Is this something that I actually can do? Is it legal? Is it moral? Right?
Hmm.
It's learning maybe when to question, those directives, especially through the cadet chain of command, because,
Hmm.
as I'll explain, you'll understand, like each year you get a little bit more responsibility. What that means is that if a plebe may be told to do something by an upperclassman, that's not right because it's the first time they've been in that leadership position too.
Hmm.
So it's really cool how they create this space for cadets to learn and grow and do hard things and mess up so that way they can learn from it and they can amend their mistakes so that way they can figure out, okay, well, maybe this isn't the best approach to the situation. So that's done in a couple different ways. Obviously they have their military training that happens in the summer, but I mean it's as small as, when we have, a team function, we ask the plebes their opinion because they're valued, but then the upperclassman makes the decision because it's their responsibility to make
Hmm.
that decision.
Hmm.
You see it in, the way that they structure their companies. We have a military structure, so each cadet is placed in a company, and then each cadet has responsibilities. So, like I said, as a freshman or as a plebe, you're a follower. You're just there to learn. Um, as a sophomore or what we call a yuck, a yearling, you are a team leader, so you might be responsible for one or two plebes where it's your job to mentor them and to help them understand maybe why we're doing the things that we're doing or where to go to do certain things, just be there for them. And then you start to get into like, well, what type of leadership position do you want as a cow or a junior or a firstie as a senior? Maybe they want to be in company leadership, maybe they want to be in team leadership. They have a little bit of that autonomy to figure out like what is it that I want to do and how do I want to challenge myself. And so, as you know, Briggs has been a team captain for 2 years. So like that was his, leadership development is how do I be, an effective team captain, not only to my coaches, but mainly to my team, and how can I help them develop and grow? And I think the development lies in the opportunity that West Point creates,
Hmm.
and then in the commitment of all of the coaches, instructors, and mentors that West Point has. You will not find a shortage of people who's here to help the cadets. So, us all sharing that same understanding of the mission to, recruiting, educating, and training leaders of character is what allows those cadets to become leaders of character.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I had a chance, like we were talking about, to be at 100th night celebrating with all of the folks. Uh, and just for those of you out there who are unfamiliar, 100th night being 100 nights pre-graduation for the, first year, the senior year. Uh, so I think like that trip in February of this year, of 2025, was different to my previous trip for a couple reasons. One, I knew what to expect. There was a moment where the first time I was out there the year before, I'd come on post and uh, there was a moment at that gate where it was like confrontational, like, what are we doing here? Like, oh my gosh. And that kind of scared me. But I say that because that was a quick way to realize, oh, this place is different. Like there are guardrails and procedures in place for a reason. And like caring about the little things for a reason, even somebody just making an entry onto post. Another way it was different was the year before I had seen a match. This time I had not. Uh, But you know what really got me this time was the amount or the proximity that you have to somebody who has a wealth of experience that you wouldn't even know unless you
Yep.
ask. And or unless you look at their uniform and identify what they have done through pins and
Which most people don't even know. I
no.
couldn't tell you what the pins
I
mean.
sure don't.
Yeah.
But what what is that like to be in a situation where anyone you walk by may have this wealth of knowledge and background history that is like even hard to fathom in terms of experience and, being a part of the thing that just dives so deep.
I mean, you're right, it is hard to fathom. Nowhere else in the world can an 18-year-old walk into a colonel's office and ask them their opinion on a decision they're about to make. As a civilian, working at West Point, at first it was really overwhelming. I was like, oh my gosh, like there's so many like high-ranking officials here. And now that I've been here for 6 years, like they're just people too. Which, obviously when I'm not wearing a rank, it's easier for me to say that than
Sure.
when, someone that, is outranked by them sees them. But um what's the environment I would say really makes you want to be a sponge. Even if
Mm,
you're not, it makes you want to soak it all in and figure out like, well, what don't I know? And who can I go to figure that out? And also like what can I give back to maybe the people who need a little bit of what I can give? And so it's really just fostering that idea of cohesive teams. And that's all the way from the senior leadership of the academy, the superintendent, the commandant, the athletic director, and all of their subordinates, all the way down to like, hey, there's four of us that are in a group project in physics, like, and everything in between. You're on a team, and the army is essentially one big cohesive team, working together, doing
mm,
everything. And that's what we're trying to create at West Point. And that's why every cadet has to be an athlete. If you're not on a NCAA team, you're on a company athletics team, or you're on
mm,
a DCA club, or you're a manager for one of those teams,
mm,
And
mhm.
that's to create that environment of not only does winning matter, but winning the right way matters. And that's
Sure.
done by building cohesive teams. And, I think I'll probably say this a couple times, but West Point is so open and welcoming in terms of like helping you learn and grow and develop, whether you're a cadet or a coach. I've been shadowing tax, which is a tactical officer that,
Hmm.
operates in the companies. So I've been shadowing them for a day. One of the instructors is letting me take a combatives class, to just kind of
Mm,
get a little taste of what the cadets have to go through.
mhm.
Um, it's just everyone is willing to help you get better and learn and understand, and they'll meet you at whatever level you're at and help you get to whatever level you want to be. It's not just, hey, we're a bunch of individuals who maybe don't have any idea of what's going on. It's like, hey, we're a well-oiled, very good operating team. How can we be a great operating team too? And so it's not just let's get you up to this level to where you're sufficient. It's, we're going to keep pushing you until you can be the best that you want to be.
Mm,
And that's really, really unique. And to have everyone committed to that same thing is even, more unique, because you can have little glimmers of that everywhere you go. I'm sure, Michigan has glimmers of that, but to have that shared understanding and to have that shared hardship of actually going through it together creates trusting bonds that will last a lifetime. And it's just really cool to be a part of.
mm. You touched on two things that I wanted to kind of harken back to. The first being the opportunity to be a sponge at a place like that. And the second thing, much earlier on, that the rifle community is very small.
Yeah.
Uh, in the same way, I feel like the world can be awfully small, depending on the different circles you run into.
Mhm.
One of these situations that I was like, did that really just happen? Is when, uh, Coach, I put on my Instagram a post of me and Grayson Mercer, and who, for reference, played soccer at Michigan State and then transferred for his final year at Western Michigan, at which point he was at a leadership conference in Kalamazoo. And you were too.
Yep.
And I get a text from you saying, "Hey, do you know Grayson?" I'm like, "Yes. How do you?" That was pretty remarkable in the way that that kind of all worked. I
Yeah.
I called Briggs. I was like, "You have no idea what just happened. Like, this is really cool. Like, worlds are colliding." But the important piece to that is like, yes, there was somebody who knows me, who knows you, who ran into each other. But you yourself were at a conference that is all about how to grow and learn and understand these different ways to be a leader and to make that difference. Like what were some of the takeaways that you had from that
Um,
conference and in like application?
You're getting into what I really love now. Okay, be careful. So I love HumanX. It was a HumanX conference, and so Grayson was there with his soccer with a couple captains from the soccer team, and then the Western Michigan volleyball team was there too. And you actually interviewed someone on
Logan
that
Case.
team.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I got to
Hmm.
meet both of them. And they
Wow.
were there because their coaches both use HumanX like I do.
Sure.
And so they just kind of brought their, athlete perspective to the conversation, which I found very, beneficial. But um I met a lot of really cool people at the conference. Did a little bit of networking, which was really cool, and really just understood to a deeper degree like what it means to develop leaders and
Mm.
how you can use a service like HumanX who helps you figure out your talent 10, your strengths,
Mm.
and your team strengths from a culture, performance, engagement, relationship standpoint. Um, I just got to learn a little bit about the unique perspectives that, other institutions have. And it wasn't just athletics. There were school superintendents that were there. There were Fortune, 500 companies that were there. There were,
Mhm.
just a working professional class of people that were there. And, probably one of the bigger takeaways that I had was and this kind of ties into the Western Michigan athletes a little bit was John U. Bacon was there, and he wrote a book called Let Them Lead. And
Mm.
me and him did like a little breakout session with that book, just about how can you foster environment that releases the reins to actually let the athletes lead the program the way that they're capable of, which is, I mean, exactly what we're trying to do at West Point, right?
Mm.
But to hear, his take on it and then see, the Western Michigan softball or soccer and Western Michigan volleyball team captains talk about how their coaches allowed them the authority to, you know, create the standards and set the tone of the culture themselves rather than just being told, hey, this is going to be the way that we do these things, really kind of gave me the confidence I needed to just be totally hands off of like, hey, like you're the team captain. These are my expectations. Implement them how you see fit. And man, did that make a difference this season for us. I mean, we went from really struggling with clickiness on the team. I said Rifle was a small community. We only have 8 athletes on the roster. Um, to we went from that like kind of tension of like, hey, maybe not everyone is like friends with each other, and maybe everyone has different goals and different priorities surrounding is military development, academic development, or rifle number one on that top 3 list, to having now a shared understanding of we're here to be the best cadets that we can be, which means committing to academics, committing to the military development. Oh, and by the way, a byproduct of that is we're also going to be winning in the range too. And to see
Mm.
that switch, I mean, that was entirely the leadership team, like the cadet leadership team doing that, and the underclassmen buying into that philosophy.
Mm.
Like that was a cadet ran philosophy that really worked and really created a very healthy environment and competitive environment this season. And that all happened because instead of, I say micromanage, Briggs will tell you I never micromanaged him, but I really like stopped telling him how to do his job and just giving him my expectations. And it was really cool. And had I not heard from those team captains at HumanX, I don't know that I would have like put 2 and 2 together and really seen the outcome that we saw this season. So that was, I think, the biggest takeaway.
Mm, most certainly. I know, so you're right. I did get to interview Logan Case, which that was phenomenal. And Logan,
She's
like,
very impressive.
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And watching her on the court, that girl can ball too. It's like,
Yeah.
dang, like,
Yeah.
whoa. She won frickin' MAC conference setter of the year 3 times in a row. It's like, okay.
I
Uh,
started watching Western Michigan soccer and volleyball after I met them. So I am like a fan of those two teams now.
did you meet Colleen Munson, who's volleyball coach?
Yes, so her husband, Matt Munson, is our Humanex rep. I was on call with him. I was on
Oh,
call with him on Friday.
wow.
Mhm.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, Colleen
here it
is very
is.
impressive. And if there's a, female coach that I aspire to be like, it's her.
Mm, mhm. And I think for me, I've not gotten to meet her. I just know about some of the athletes and I hear from them. And if what they say is like a fraction of what she says, I would like to have a conversation because that thing would be rich with information.
Yes.
Uh,
I only met her at the conference.
okay.
And like the opinion I have of her is in such high regard that like I don't need to talk to her every day to know that, I mean, she is doing something the right way.
Mm-hmm. I remember one of my good friends who graduated Michigan State, 2023. He is the assistant coach at Central Michigan and Central for volleyball. And Central and Western being in the MAC together, they play at least twice a year. So knowing Logan and knowing Clark, I said, you know what? I'm gonna go up there to Central to Mount Pleasant, Michigan, and I'm gonna watch him figure it out. Uh, here's my anecdote from this year. Western had a brutal non-conference schedule because, and I think it's a testament to Colleen's ability to tap into what her team can do. They played Marquette, Texas, Kansas, and Michigan State in a row. And it's like, okay, should a MAC team be doing that? Conventional wisdom says probably not. They went 0-4,
But they
but
did it they did it well. Like, I mean, I agree with you. I think Colleen knew what she was doing when she set that
mhm,
schedule.
that's right. And here's what was interesting. Western Michigan started 0-5 in the MAC, and people were like, what the heck is going on? So I go out to Central Michigan and I'm watching them, and they get whooped in the first set by Central because Central actually, for all intents and purposes, had a good season this year. But and I'm not going to let Clark know I just said that. I can't compliment the guy. He's got to bring it back for another year. But it was a great year, and they're getting ripped apart. And I've never seen this before, Coach. Colleen brings the squad into the like up the tunnel, not quite to the locker room, but out of sight. And you just hear words flying in chaos. And it's like, whoa, in this small, compact gym. They come out and run Central over 3 sets in a row. And then they went like 14-2 over their
Yeah.
last 16 matches, went back to the NCAAs again, won the MAC again. It's like after having a start that was challenging,
Mhm.
continuing into a time of tumultuous energy, and then the thing just took off. And it's like I think that was a meticulous plan. I really do.
Yeah.
Maybe not to say, it was destined to work out that way, but it did, and it's no, coincidence that it did because they were tested early.
Yeah. They were tested early, and I think, you know, you telling that story is the first time I had heard that. I think that's also just a testament to, Coach Colleen's ability to develop those authentic, trusting relationships with her players so that way she can hold them accountable and she can pump them up and push them to finish the rest of the season strong. And
Hmm.
that is what makes the difference.
Yeah, yeah, most certainly. Most certainly. What I gotta ask you this. what are three words? Give me three words that you would use to describe your leadership style.
I'm gonna say authentic for my first word because I try and be very open with my athletes.
Hmm.
With maintaining that professional boundary and standard, but something going on in my life, they know about it. Because they're a big part of my life, right? So,
Yes.
authentic would be my first word. And I know I've already said a lot more than three words right now, but um, authentic, I'm gonna use the word cautious,
Okay.
because I'm cautious in when I jump in to intervene.
Hmm.
I've really learned to let the cadets figure it out, even if that means they kind of fail a little bit before they figure it out.
Hmm.
And that's come with just understanding the West Point mission. And I think a lot of that it's really hard because like I know the solution a lot of times, but I can't just give them the solution. And so I'm very cautious on um when I step in and when I start to intervene with things. So authentic, cautious. And I mean, the last word I'm going to use is just passionate. Like I try and create an environment that breeds passion. I firmly believe passion's an output, not an input. And
Hmm.
because I'm here at West Point working with cadets who are doing things for, a bigger reason, I'm very passionate about what I do. And, I'm confident that that shows when I talk about what I do and,
Yeah.
when people see me interact with them. So that would be my third word.
Most certainly. And I know you talked about the leadership style and the way of kind of laissez-faire starting to really contribute and work within the culture of this season and the way that happened. Me following along in the capacity I saw that there were some program records coming along, some things, some numerical values
Yep.
that back that up. When you see numbers that are worth, a whole lot to confirm what's going on, a lot like seeing the result of winning Conference Coach of the Year. What is a number like that? What are kind of your indicators to look at numbers and go, okay, we're headed there. We're like almost getting to where we want to go.
I mean, I think it's a combination of things. One, I mean, you know a little bit about rifle, but for those that don't, like, I mean, it is 95% mental. Like, it's like you're a basketball player and your only job is to stand at the free throw line and shoot free throws the entire time. Like, you're just doing the same thing over and over again.
Hmm.
So, I think the biggest indicator actually isn't a number. It's how are we thinking about what we're doing?
Hmm.
But just go beyond that a little bit. I really try and look at each individual against themselves. Obviously, we want to win, right? Like winning matters, especially at the academies. And like I want to create a winning program, but focusing on that isn't going to create a winning
Hmm.
program, right? Focusing on the individual development and the team cohesion is what actually results in, a winning, program record score and things like that. But I'll look at the individual development of, hey, where were you at last month? Where do you want to go? And what are we actually doing to help you get there?
Hmm.
Um, and then we'll look at, maybe a practice match in relation to an actual match. Like we would have had 8 program records if we included every practice match that we shot this year, but it's, maybe what's the difference between how we're training and how we're performing,
Sure.
and how can we lessen that gap a little bit? And so we use, a mental performance coach from the Center for Enhanced Performance, which is a phenomenal, department that West Point has for all cadets to use, not just athletes. And that's, I think, what we like really focus on. Like, yes, we want to see the team improvement, but we could have a program record and no one shoot a personal best, which is, telling its own story and, in one hand, but on the
Hmm.
other hand, it's like, okay, we performed much better as a team today, but guess what? Individually, here's all the things that we know we still need to do. And then it's kind of figuring out, well, how do you get those two to work together? Because we're not a team sport. You're not going to see the athletes talking to each other on the line. Like you don't have to communicate like you do in soccer or volleyball or baseball or, the other team sports. So it can be really difficult to judge how are we progressing if maybe, one or two people aren't progressing, but the team is, or vice versa, So it's just having that humility to understand, like, either we're talking about the individual or we're talking about the team, and then we're going to talk about them together. And it gets a little confusing, but that's more so what I'm looking at.
Hmm. Most certainly. And I think this actually was one of the things that I really wanted to touch on, and something you just said sparked that is in rifle, uh, it's a unique situation because it's one of the few, if not the only, co-ed sport that a lot of departments see. And I wanted to ask you within that is like, is that another level of difficulty as a coach to kind of craft message towards your male versus female competitors? Or what are you looking at when speaking to, obviously, with the understanding that everybody gets equal treatment, receives
Yeah.
equal coaching, and is on the same plane? But I imagine there's got to be a time where there's a line between some of the things that you're saying and some of the approaches that you have on either side of that with a co-ed sport.
I mean, first of all, it's just really cool that it's co-ed. I was on a co-ed team in college as well, and
Hmm.
there are some, all-female teams that exist.
Sure.
Um, it's just really cool, especially as like a woman who maybe, doesn't get the opportunity to compete against men regularly,
Hmm.
to like actually be on the same playing field. Um, so one phenomenal opportunity, like just so grateful that it's a co-ed sport and that they don't separate us at the NCAA level. In terms of how maybe we do things differently, I don't know that it matters in a team sense. Especially like here where at West Point, like you have to pass the standards regardless of who you are.
Right.
So I think there's also just that underlying philosophy that the cadets have of like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Like the ACFT is the ACFT. I've got to
Hmm.
pass it anyway.
Hmm.
Um, but that kind of comes into how you build those individual relationships with the athletes.
Sure.
Like the way that I talk and push, one of my freshman girls on the team might be different than the way that I talk and I push Briggs. Not only because, it's a male compared to a female, but it's, a firstie compared to a freshman. He's
Sure.
got a lot more, like, he can take a lot more correction than maybe one of my freshmen can. But
Hmm.
um it's you see that in who they choose to talk to. Like I have, a male assistant coach, and there are some times where the females are like, hey coach, like, do you mind stepping out so that way I can talk to Coach Dempster about something? And it might be something that's specific to being a woman or being a female, so things like that definitely happen.
Sure.
But I've also had guys that have, preferred to talk to me over, my assistant coach, and vice versa, so it matters, because there are definitely some things, especially when we're talking about like the positions, like as a woman, like you can push your hip out farther than a man can.
Hmm.
So like the way that
Hmm.
we build your position might be a little bit different. You have different mobility, so the way that we build your kneeling position might be a little bit different. Um, but it's also different depending on how long your arms are and how tall you are, and that doesn't really have any, that doesn't matter, if you're male or female. Um, but it's more so in like, who do you feel comfortable going to? And that doesn't really matter if it's me, my assistant coach, one of our officer representatives that's a military member attached to the team.
Hmm.
It's just creating that space where they can be authentically them and they can feel comfortable coming to us with whatever problem or success that they want to share. And it's welcoming that. The challenges, I will say, is having a lot of different personalities
Hmm.
on a co-ed team.
Sure.
But that's with anything. And
Absolutely.
especially with the small team, like it's important to not have cliques because we don't have room for cliques. And thankfully that's something that I haven't had to deal with this year because the team and the leadership team, the cadet leadership team has all done a very good job at making sure everyone's on the same page and that we're all working towards that common goal of, developing and becoming leaders of character who also compete.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there are two more places, so long as you're okay with it, that I would
Yeah.
like to go
Yeah.
with the conversation. The first is you just talked about building a position. And I think that's important for folks to recognize and to reconcile with, because I think in the conventional setting, when I've spoken about rifle to different folks who have limited to no understanding, is that, and not to throw shade, but that is true, less eyes on the sport. What you begin to realize is that maybe it's more athletic than I give it credit for, in the way of having standing, kneeling, and prone, being in the positions where you're there for sometimes 90 minutes, 2 hours. Even I would imagine during training sessions, it's longer, or can be. So what is that like? To have a sport that people look at as maybe unathletic or
Yeah.
whatever they say. And then you get out there and it's like actually demanding mentally, maybe even more, and physically in
Mhm.
ways people don't recognize.
Yeah, I mean it's unique because you're right. If you don't know what you're looking at, it just looks like they're just standing, sitting, or laying on the ground and
Hmm.
shooting, you know. But it's very particular. You know, there's a reason why we wear the funky suits that we wear.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the equipment is as adjustable as it is.
Hmm.
And really, I mean, like what we're looking at when we're building those positions and the physical strain on the athlete is like you're basically in a static pose. You're in a static yoga pose for 3 hours for a competition. Like that's a long time. Like, pick whatever yoga pose you want. Like, I mean, look, Warrior 2 isn't a super difficult yoga pose, right? Like anyone could probably at least get into that pose. Now hold it for 30 minutes,
Hmm.
right? Probably couldn't do that, not to the perfect form that you would need to. So a lot of what we do and what we focus on, especially in the weight room, aside from the RB Combat Fitness test training that we do,
Sure.
is mobility. Like, do you have the hip mobility and flexibility that you actually need to get into the good positions? We do like same thing, head mobility, like you're shooting like this. So like, do you have the mobility to get everything into the position that it needs to be in? Because the sport is all about bone on bone contact. The weight of the rifle should be on your hand, which theoretically should go down your elbow, goes into your hip all the way to your ankle on the floor. So,
Mhm.
um, it's one, knowing what you're trying to look for, identifying the problems that you have, and then figuring out, well, what do I need to do to either, stretch this part or strengthen this part or work on these elements, of my physique to aid the sport. So one thing that is always a struggle is when you get like really muscular guys, which and girls, but really muscular people, which happens at West Point because like we are very physically demanding. Um, they can't get into the proper position with their arms and standing. And
Mm.
so it's how do we work through that to not hurt their physical development and athletic development from, a military side, but to also not hurt their athletic development from a rifle side as well.
Mm.
And so, we do a lot of cardio, like can you keep your breathing in check while you're shooting and not just while you're shooting during practice or during a match, but say you make a final and now it's a very short time limit that you have to shoot. Your heart rate's going to spike immediately. Can you use your breathing to get that heart rate down a little bit? The lower the heart rate, the better anyway. Um, so there's some like very niche things that we look at and we talk about, especially with our strength coach and our nutritionist, honestly, to make sure that we're properly fueled for training. Um, but yeah, it definitely looks like they're just standing there shooting at a dot on a piece of paper. If you don't know what you're looking at, very physically demanding for sure.
And shoot, I mean, you talk about that piece of paper, you should see the size of that thing with
Yep.
relativity. I mean, aim small, miss small. It's crazy.
Yeah, so the tin that they are aiming at is about the size of a 12 size font period in a newspaper. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because they'll get so frustrated sometimes when they're like, Coach, like I don't understand why I'm shooting eights. And I'm like, you do realize that you're still hitting a penny at 50 feet. Like, yes, you're not shooting to the standard that I know you want to be shooting at. It's the standard that we have, and we will absolutely address it. But also just maybe have that reality check that like it's
Mm.
not that big of a deal. Like I'm still a great marksman.
Mm.
I'm here to work on mastering my craft, not just to shoot tens.
Mm.
Like the outcome isn't what matters. It's the process of getting there. And so it's really cool to like just like put it in those very simple terms of like nobody cares if you shoot a 10 on a piece of paper, but like the way that you're thinking about it and the way that you're treating yourself actually matters a lot
Mm,
more.
dang, that was good right there. Oh my gosh. Coach, one more thing. And I appreciate you for having this conversation with me very much. It's meant a lot to sit here and do it and kind of pick the brain of somebody who I've heard through the vessel of my guy, kind of some of these thoughts and formed in his way of thinking through them and with sharing them and extrapolating what you say and some of the practices that have been adopted. One of those, though, that I'm fascinated by, and I gotta know, this is a fun one to end on, is I've seen you all do team building exercises, such as apple picking, cooking pies, baking pies, I should say, dog sledding in Alaska, to name a few. One of my favorite ones is the Cajun crustacean boil that has been broken out. So, so Coach, please tell me, like being from Louisiana, having this background of knowing how to get it done relating to some boils, uh, what is that like to show the team that practice and to use these different vessels we talk about to bring them together?
I mean, that kind of goes to, when you asked me to, give those three words about my leadership style, like authenticity is one of them. Like
Hmm.
you can take the girl out of Louisiana, but you cannot take the Louisiana out of the girl, right? Like I just love sharing just the joy of a crawfish boil with the team, because a crawfish it's a social event. Like yeah, you're eating crawfish, but it is all about like just enjoying the time spent with the ones that you care about and that you
Mm,
love. And that's like at the heart of it, like that's what we do in Louisiana. And that's what my family does. And so I grew up going to college and, thankfully I was only 5 hours from home. My parents got to watch me compete at every home competition, which was phenomenal. And I definitely took that for granted when I was in college. But that really made me want to do something like that for the cadets because their parents can't just come and visit whenever they want and
right.
they can't get out here all the time because most of them are local to here. And so, like, being that home away from home is something that I didn't really have in college that I really wanted to make sure that the cadets had.
Mm,
And when I'm thinking about, like, well, what makes me feel like I'm at home? It's having a crawfish boil and things like that. So that's our team, our year-end banquet, our year-end boil. Um, and the team seemed to really like it. And I actually don't know if they want to do it again, but we're doing it again because I want to do it again.
that's right.
So it's really cool to just share that part of my life with them because it's such a big part of who I am and why I am the way that I am. And so
Mm,
it's really cool to do that.
hmm.
Um, and it's fun for them too, right? Like, they get to try something new, like teach them how to peel the crawfish every year. We get to hang out at the house and just like forget for a day that like, we have all of these other stressors going on, whether it be, West Point or exams coming up or the military
Mm,
development or whatever. We get to just spend time with the people that we care about and the people that we share so much of our life with. And we get to do that at my house, which I just feel super lucky to be able to foster that type of environment. So I'm excited for our crawfish boil. We're about a month away from it. So actually we're having a crawfish boil on your college graduation day.
wow.
So I will eat some crawfish for you.
Yeah, peel one of them things back for me.
Can
Coach,
do. Can do.
Coach. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's everything I have today. For the Rec
Well,
Room, episode 26. Do you have any parting thoughts?
no, just, can't thank you enough for having me on. I know I reached out and expressed my interest to being on the show and, I'll kind of echo what I said earlier. I wanted to be on here because you're authentic, you're passionate, and you really bring out the best in people. And, I'm just lucky enough to have, a great athlete like Briggs that introduced me to, someone as just, carefree and, spirited as you are. And so thank you so much for having me. And I cannot wait to see, what you do next. So it's exciting.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And folks, that's been the Rec Room with Brian Rector and today Leighton Dempster. on episode 26. We just continue to roll on the Rec Room. We'll see y'all soon. Cool.